Hello, hello. Happy Taco Tuesday. Hang on. I gotta get my little friend if y'all haven't seen it yet. This is my girl. We love to celebrate Taco Tuesday, favorite day of the week. So happy that y'all are here. I am warning you now. We are gonna have a little bit shorter of a live stream today because I'm going out of town tomorrow. I'm going to a super secret conference that I don't really know if I can talk about yet, but you'll eventually hear what it is. So I'm going to be leaving tomorrow. And then after that, I'm kind of going to be on vacation for a little bit. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to take a break for a little bit and hang out with family for the holiday that's happening next week. We have Thanksgiving here in the US, and the kids will be off school, and I'm excited to see friends and family. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, y'all, let me know where you're watching in the comments. And we are talking about podcast ads today. That is what today's podcast episode is about. So, we are going to dive in here in a second. But I wanted to tell you, let me pull it up right here, because what we're doing today, I had it open. Podcast ads are something that I feel really passionate about, and I'm going to add this right here. So here we are. So this is podcast ads, the deep dive, the episode. There we go. So this is an episode of the Profit Podcast. If you haven't listened to it, there's my show. It's up there in the corner. This is my weekly podcast. Episodes come out every Tuesday and Thursday. And today is it's extra special simply because I am grateful to my earlier self that knew I was eventually going to turn this episode or this content into a podcast episode. So I've become very passionate about repurposing content, and that is what today's episode is. It's a repurposed training that I did earlier in October, and it just makes my life so much easier, y'all. I'm just going to tell it to you like it is. People are like, how do you create so much content? I get this question all the time. How are you able to create podcast episodes for your weekly podcast? Then you have a daily podcast. Then you have your email newsletter. You put out content on social media. You put out 3 YouTube videos a week. How do you do it all? Y'all, repurpose content. Work smarter, not harder. So whenever I look at a piece of content, I say, okay, this is the end goal, right? Whether it's talking on someone else's stage, or I'm creating a product, or I have to do a live stream, even live streams like this. Like I have gone into the idea of, okay, I'm going to show up live for my audience. Is there something in there that I could repurpose into a live stream? Sometimes it's a question that I get asked. That's happened multiple times. Sometimes it's the actual stream, like where someone had a really good question, and instead of just taking that question out and like, oh, I had this great question, let me create a brand new piece of content, I will strip out a 3 to 5 minute segment of a live stream and use that for a YouTube video. Work smarter, not harder, okay? This episode today was a training that I did in October. So hi, Diane. So happy that you're here. Yes, Jay is like, is this actually live? Yes, we are actually live. You're hanging out with us live. This is not like a pre-recorded premiere. I think that's what that's called. I don't know. That's not what this is. We're live here today. This is Taco Tuesday. It is November 16th. And look, in case y'all missed it, if y'all are coming in late, I got my Taco Tuesday sign. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. And if you haven't been here for me to describe what this little GIF, whatever she is, she was originally supposed to be like this big down here. She's humongous, and I love her. I love her for being who she is. She knows she's a delicious taco, and she showed up here for the party. So, oh my gosh. Okay, so let's go back to what we're talking about. We're talking about podcast ads. So let me go back over here. All right, podcast ads. what I wanted to show you is right here. So if you want to know about podcast ads, the reason why I'm so passionate about this, I give you all the descriptions, the ways that you can use them. There's no shortage of how to use podcast ads, but I want all of you, everybody listening, if you're watching live, if you're on the replay, podcast ads are not something that you only have if you have sponsored content. Okay? Let me say it for the people in the back. You don't just have podcast ads when you have an exchange of dollars, right? You don't just have it when someone says, here, I'm going to pay you this amount of money, say this thing, put it on your podcast, and you have sponsored content. That's great. That's what everyone, most people that come to me, they're like, how do I get a sponsor for my show? How can I get people to pay me to say things on their podcast? Yes, those are ads. That's the dream, right? It's the dream that everyone has, is I want millions of downloads and I want people to pay me money to just mention their product or their service on my podcast. This is what a lot of people come to me and say, how do I get that? How do I achieve that? And my mentality behind it is, if that is your ultimate goal, but you have like 4 listeners right now, how can you incorporate podcast ads into what you're doing today? Not what you're trying to do in the future when you get millions of downloads and thousands of listeners. What can you do today, right now, so that you are prepared when that sponsor comes knocking on your door and says, hey, I want you to record this for me. You can turn around and say, oh, podcast ads, I got this. I know how to do dynamic content. I know how to do baked in ads. Sure, you want a pre-roll? You want a post-roll? You want a mid-roll? If you know how to speak this language, first of all, you're going to impress whatever brand or sponsor you're thinking about working with, or the podcast network that comes to you and says, hey, like, we've been watching what you're doing. We think that you have a great topic, a great message that you're sharing, and we would love to connect you to these other other sponsors that we have a connection with, because you're already doing a great job with ads. So the reason why I say this, in podcast ads, calls to action, they can be pretty interchangeably, like you can use the words, sorry y'all, I gotta get a drink. I had a tickle in the back of my throat. It wasn't going away. But you can use calls to action, podcast ads, the same, essentially, but the difference is a podcast ad is you enticing your audience to purchase something, to buy something, to get into your funnel. So I look at a call to action as, hey, go follow me on Instagram. Go listen to this other episode. Go subscribe to my email newsletter. Those are generic calls to action that I think you should be doing 100%. And I have content about how to use podcast ads as your calls to action. But I think it's important that you understand the podcast ads, the self-sponsored ones that I have been doing. Let me see. I'm like, did I do these in the beginning? I don't know that I did these in the beginning. I had calls to action in my podcast from the very beginning. Subscribe to the show, leave a rating and a review. Like, definitely have those from the very beginning of your podcast. But as you start going, and a lot of you are online business owners, you want to have an online business one day, you've got to start practicing having podcast ads in your show today. And there's a very, very specific reason why I'm so passionate about this. I'm going to tell this story. If you've been around here for a while, you've probably heard this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. There was a podcast I was listening to circa 2013, 2014. It's probably 2014. And it was whenever I first fell in love with podcasts. And I was, y'all, I feel like I have a yawn and I have a tickle and that something's going on. Oh my gosh. Okay. And it's probably not helping, y'all. I'm obsessed. I got my HEB sparkling water. Shout out, not sponsored, but HEB, if you want to come hang out with me, we go through cases of your bubble water and we would be very delighted to endorse the local food chain. Okay, let's go back to this because this is a story I am super passionate about. I was listening to this podcast. I was really enjoying the message, what they were doing, what they were saying, and they kept saying, we will never have ads on this show. We'll never have ads. Like what we're talking about, the call to action was like, oh, if you want to learn more, go to our website. If you want to learn more, go to our Facebook group. Like there was just very generic calls to action. And then one day, you know it's coming. You already know what happened. You know, they started selling things with podcast ads. They said, oh, are you looking for this? Go to stamps.com. If you want to do this, go buy this mattress and like all these things. Like I felt betrayed as a listener. I know it's super dramatic, but this is how it is in my head and why I'm so passionate about it. I'm like, they kept saying, we'll never have podcast ads. We'll never have podcast ads. We'll never have podcast ads. And then that one day, I put in my earbuds. I'm walking. I got my jogging stroller. I'm like, got my son. He's in there. Like I'm jogging, going on my walk, going on my run. And then I hear these podcast ads start. So what happened is they went from a show that was pretty successful, and then they transitioned to having brands and sponsors on their show when they said, we'll never have brands and sponsors on our show. And the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because it was so jarring. Y'all, I dropped it. I dropped it like a hot potato. I said, nope, I'm done. I'm not going to listen to this podcast anymore. It was like this break in trust and this break of, they did something that they said they weren't going to do. And ever since then, I thought as a podcast listener and as a podcast coach now, I am like, I never want someone to listen to my podcast and have that really jarring moment of changing the content. Like, here's this expectation, right? It's the expectation of it's going to be 30 minutes exactly. It's going to have this exact same format. Some people do that with their shows. Awesome. More power to you. If that's how you set things up, that's fantastic. But with my audience, I want them knowing, hey, I'm going to sell you stuff from time to time. That's my own products, my own services, or something else that I'm endorsing, something else that I believe in. I tell people from the beginning, this is going to happen because I don't want to wait until all of a sudden I've been building this audience. And then we have thousands of listeners. And then all of a sudden I'm like, it's like you flip the switch. I was thinking the switch is this way, but I'm like, no, it's up and down. You flip the switch on your audience and you say, oh, by the way, now we're going to be truncated and have all of these ads like at the beginning, the middle, the end. And then all of a sudden you lose your listenership because they're like, I can't take it anymore. All you do is talk about these, like, I'm trying to not call out companies that I've heard so many times on podcasts because I don't want to do that. But it's like, here's this diet supplement, or here's this other podcast, or here's this HR service. Y'all know who I'm talking about with that one. Like, oh my gosh, like it's so ingrained in my head. I've heard their ads so many times over and over again that it makes me almost like repulsed from what they do. I listen to so many podcasts. I know this is probably just all in my mind as a marketer, but I think that it's really important to have these small baby steps of one, understanding how podcast ads work. This was my number one question when I started podcasting. I was like, well, how do they get that audio in there? What does that look like? What are my options? And thankfully, there's more options now to not just have baked in content that's only listened to when an episode is initially aired, right? So if you go back to episodes that happened in like October 2020, I was promoting my book. I have started Binge Worthy Podcast. I think I have the picture up here. Hang on, this will be interesting. Oh, there it is. So this is my book. I was promoting the crap out of this book last year in 2020 whenever I was launching, and I had all of these ads in the episodes leading up to the launch of the book. It's how my podcast ads worked, but they only were promoted during those episodes. They didn't go back to episode 1. It didn't go back to episode 20. It was just in those episodes because they were baked in content. And I talk about this in this training that if you go listen to it, crystalprofit.com, episode 307. Like, you're going to learn all of these things, baked in content, self-sponsored, all the different things that we were just talking about. And I think that it's really important to understand, well, that would be really helpful whenever everything goes live, the initial time. And this may work as well in perpetuity, like in evergreen. It's a book, right? A book, you can go grab this right now on Amazon at any time, right? You don't have to wait for the cart open, cart close. It's only available this certain time. You can just go whenever. So I like baked in ads for that reason, when you're promoting something that's evergreen and people can go get it anytime. But then you have certain other things. Maybe you have a live event. Maybe you have a coaching program. Maybe you have a course that you're launching. Maybe you have, like, there's so many reasons, an affiliate launch, or y'all, Black Friday is just right around the corner. And I've already had people asking, like, are you going to do Black Friday promotion? What are you going to do for Black Friday? What are you going to do for this? And I'm like, well, I just love that I have the option to use my dynamic content, which is a totally different type of ad. And it's what I use with Buzzsprout. So I actually don't have, let me see. Let me do this right here. So if you go to this webpage, you can click on this button right here and it will take you to Buzzsprout. If you don't have a hosting provider, this is the one that I use. I'm a proud partner with them. And what they added in 2021, which is so funny because I feel like it's been an available feature forever now because I use it so much. They have what's called dynamic content. Now, with dynamic content, different from baked in, right? Baked in was like, oh, it's just in those book launch episodes because I recorded it. It was baked into the actual audio. Dynamic content allows me to put a clip of audio at the beginning of an episode, at the end. And I've been told, hopefully in the near future, we'll have the ability to do a mid-roll ad as well. I don't know when that's coming. It's like, maybe that's my wishful thinking. I'm like, please make that happen because it would be so cool. And I'd love to teach about doing mid-roll ads. But I think that it's really awesome that we have this feature. And if you are a Buzzsprout user, you're an existing Buzzsprout user and you've never used this, then I encourage you to go check it out. Actually, I'm going to show you because I know I always have Buzzsprout open in the background. I'm like, I know it's open in one of these tabs. I am just going to show you what it is and what it looks like. You can go look at all this on my YouTube channel as well because I have so many things on dynamic content. Oh, I have the wrong screen shared. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, so this is my dynamic content for the Profit Podcast. I don't do this on my daily podcast because I typically don't do promotions and stuff there. But I want you to see I could upload a pre-roll ad right here. I can do a post-roll ad here. And that allows me to change out my promotions from month to month and decide, well, which different ads do I want to do? So right now, for example, I'm an affiliate for a program that is all about building your email list. And so what I have done is I've thought of a creative way to share about this program that I really like and one that I totally endorse. And I've created an ad for it and I put it on the podcast. Now, I won't leave this up there forever. It's like I have a specific time whenever it goes up and when it gets taken down. But if you go listen to my episode 1, if you go listen to episode 23, if you go listen to episode 75 right now, you will hear this ad. That is intentional because I want people to hear it no matter if they found my podcast and they're listening to my most played episode, which is a lot older than what I'm putting out today, or they're listening to something that I put out 4 months ago, they're going to hear this ad. So it's really important that you look at your podcast. Like I have this bigger conceptual idea of not just a podcast as a podcast, but a podcast as a business. And if you're treating your podcast that way, you need to know, how can I reach all of my listeners? Not just the ones that are listening today. How can I serve everybody? Because people will find me through SEO, through keywords that I've intentionally done on my show notes. And if they listen to any of those episodes on my website, which people do. Like, I'm so surprised when I go into my stats and I look at, well, where are people actually listening? Well, the number one is Apple Podcast. For whatever reason, y'all love some Apple Podcast, but which is where, I listened to for a long time. Now I listen to Good Pods, different story. Go follow me on Good Pods. I'm at Crystal Profit. I would love to show you all the things that I listen to. You can literally see every single podcast episode that I listen to right there on Good Pods, which is why I love this app. It's so much fun. So shout out to JJ and her team over there because they do an amazing job with their podcast platform. But I just love that you can really look at your podcast as a business once you get the idea down of how am I serving people and how can I serve not just today's listeners, but people that are going to be listening 6 months from now. And I can either bake in content for an evergreen product, like my book, what I was just talking about, or I can create something that is timely, that's going to go back to the people that are just finding my podcast today, and it's going to teach them something or entice them to go to my YouTube channel. You just launched a YouTube channel. Put an ad for it on your podcast. Talk about it. Promote it. And I don't think that it's self-serving unless it is self-serving. This is something that I hear a lot. People will say, well, I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to talk about my stuff too much. And I'm like, well, it's not about you. If it is about you, then yeah, you're doing something wrong. You're 100% doing something wrong. But if you look at your content by the value that you're adding, it's not hard for me at all to tell people to go subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's not. If I were just showing up and talking about myself and I'm amazing and you should absolutely go follow me because I tell you all the things about my amazing life and all the amazing things that I do because I'm so amazing. Yeah, that would be annoying. I wouldn't go watch that. I wouldn't go listen to it. But I know how much value is there for beginner podcasters, for people that are trying to figure out their podcast, especially for those of you that are solo podcasters. Like, y'all love the solo content that's on my channel. It's always the top performing stuff. But I share things on there that are valuable. I share the things that I wish someone would have told me when I first started my podcast journey. So it's not hard for me to talk about my YouTube channel because I know it's valuable. I know that it will help someone that is stuck and they're thinking about quitting their podcast and they really don't want to talk about it anymore. So if you feel like, well, if I did a podcast ad about blah, 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 it would be self-serving, you've got to change your perspective and ask, well, how can I add value? How can I add value to the people that are watching? How can I add value to the people that are listening? Because when you lead with value, you don't have that struggle. I don't have that struggle. I don't have a struggle sitting up here and saying, hey, go check out my book. If you want to know how to start a binge-worthy podcast, go check out my book. I know it's super valuable because I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into creating this book. If you want to know about my podcast, go listen to the podcast. It's free. You don't have to pay nothing for it. That was really bad. My grammar was really bad. I felt real country saying that. You ain't got to pay nothing for it. That's what it felt like. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The true East Texas is coming out in the girl today. But you get what I'm saying. If you have something that's valuable, so people will say, I don't want to promote my social media. People know that they can go find me on social media. Why would I tell them that? I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know that you prefer Twitter over Instagram. I wouldn't know that you really do amazing job at TikTok because I'm hang out on my Facebook group. So you have to tell people what you want them to do. And that's really what it all boils down to. When we go back to talking about podcast ads and calls to action, they're so important. They're so dang important, whether you're just getting started or you've been doing this for a while and you've never made any calls to action. Start today. Start today. Start immediately. And it doesn't have to be this like, oh, sign up for my $2,000 program or join my group coaching, my mastermind, something that's like a really big ask, because that might be like, whoa. Hang on. I feel like we rushed from like, this is our first date to all of a sudden you just proposed. That's how it feels if you make too big of a leap whenever you're doing your podcast ads. But if you are showing up, you're serving your people time and time again, week after week, something of value, goes back to value. You're offering them something of value, then making that ask isn't as hard. It's not as hard. I don't feel bad when I am promoting those $2,000 plus programs that I will promote on my podcast. I do. They're not my programs. It's other affiliate programs that I'm associated with. But when I make those asks, I don't apologize for it because I know how valuable they are. I know that they will get you results the way that they've gotten me results because I don't promote and endorse anything that I don't use myself. That's very, very important for anybody that's looking to get into affiliate marketing and you want to promote other things because you can use affiliate marketing. Go listen to today's episode. I go into specific examples of how I use affiliate marketing with my podcast ads. I use them a lot. It's not just like one-offs here and there. I talk about them a lot. I do the same thing on my YouTube channel. It's the same with calls to action, podcast ads, YouTube ads. It's all the same when you look at it from a marketing perspective of, is this adding value to someone else? And if you lead that way, it doesn't feel slimy. That's when people are like, I feel like I'm talking about myself. I feel like I'm being annoying. I feel like I'm being narcissistic. I feel like I've heard it all. And I say, well, maybe you are. And that feels a little rough, right? That's like the tough love that I'm about. And I'm like, well, maybe you are talking about yourself too much. And people are like, whoa, that was a little harsh. So I'm like, well, if you're just talking about yourself and how amazing you are, how does that add value to someone else? It probably doesn't. So lead with value, have clear calls to action for your ads, and make sure that you understand the best strategy that's going to work for you. Because some of the things that I talk about in today's training are a little more advanced. And that was kind of the point because it was the most in-depth training I've done on ads. I've done other content on podcast ads, but I really want you to go watch this. If you're just like, I have no idea how any of it works, go listen to today's episode. You won't have that excuse anymore. I break everything down very practically. And like I said, I can help you get started today with podcast ads. So I told y'all today's episode was going to be short because this is really, I got to go. I have to pack. I'm going out of town. I'm leaving on a jet plane tomorrow and I got a lot to pack. I got a lot of things to do. I have some more batching to do too. Like if you don't listen to the Potty Report, this is my other podcast. Go check it out right here. It's my daily show. I talk about how I prepared to take time off. I give you the whole rundown. I do a lot more practical tips, like short practical tips because they're 5 minutes or less. But I talked about how I plan to take 2 weeks off. And that 2 weeks starts tomorrow. It's technically a week and a half. 2 weeks, week and a half. It's all the same, right? I mean, time off is time off. So hi, so happy that you're here. I am just about to sign off. We are wrapping up and I will be back in December. We're not having a live show next week because I will be on vacation and enjoying all the things with vacation. But we will be back in December to do more of our live streams and all the things that we love to do here on the channel, in the Facebook group, wherever you're watching, on LinkedIn. And I'm just so grateful that you're hanging out with us because this is it's so much fun. I love doing these live streams every week. So y'all have a fantastic day. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Bye, y'all.